Welcome to Dr. M Health Corner Talk Show. Welcome back. I am Dr. Unati, your host. Welcome. It's a Friday, 12:15 p.m. MST, 2:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 8:15 p.m. South African time. I might be biased, but I'm South African, so I'll always mention my people. Welcome. I see people are coming on. Welcome, welcome. Today we are doing a continuation discussion of last two parts we did. I call it part three because we did a mother wound and we did a father wound last week. And today, now we're going to sum up just to give a background of what this talk is about in case you missed it. And I would like you to go back to our part one because it's very important to see the context, where it's coming from, and also how my guests really landed beautifully in the last 2 weeks. So basically, we talked about mother wounds and father wounds, how these wounds impact a child later on in life and also during childhood. So my guests did really good work last time, talked about how even fathers, because sometimes we think it's just only mothers because we are the primary caregivers, but fathers have the same role. So before I don't want to take time here. So as again our guests, you saw them last week. In the middle here, I have Dr. Charles Odame Anka. He is actually a scientist, air pollution. Hey, Doc, air pollution scientist. He's actually a president of Calgary Ghanaian Association. He's involved in many other organizations in the community. He's a father, obviously, and of course, he was the right person to come and talk about this, coming from all the perspectives of knowing multicultural approaches. So I thought he was a good fit for this. And of course, next to Dr. Charles is Dr. T. You know my girl here, Dr. Tope. But she is also a colleague, a specialist family physician. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author. You guys, you need to check out her book. Actually, I'm going to land it here, where she actually puts down and break down how these mother wounds could affect us at a later stage in our choices. Welcome, Dr. Charles and Dr. Tope.
Thank you.
I'm excited, guys, because you landed beautiful nuggets last time, and I must tell you, it actually left my community with quite a lot of thinking. And people, I can say to you here that people are hurting. There's so much that has happened in their lives, and today I would like you guys to share your thoughts, as our topic says, adverse events secondary to parental wounds. Obviously, whatever happens to us in childhood would or will affect us at a later stage. So I'm going to give it to you guys. It's a free stage. Dr. Charles, what do you see in the community? I want us to actually bring it from that perspective. You see a lot of people in the community multiculturally.
Dr.
Land,
Unati,
brother.
Dr. Unati, first and foremost, let me just tell our audience that this is not a show to self-pontificate that we are perfect and we're trying to bring issues up. We are also survivors of similar wounds. I lost my dad when I was very young, okay? And for the audience to know, he passed away on my laps whilst we were traveling at a tender age of 11. And having to live from being my dad being the main breadwinner, and that moved me from a city lifestyle where his company trucks used to pick us up in the morning, take us to school. After school, they come and pick us up, drop us at home, to a village where there was no electricity, and we had to start life. And I wake up at night seeing my mom crying, and at that young age, I have to wake up in the morning thinking like a man to ensure that my mom is happy. So we all have our wounds from different perspectives. But when you realize that some of this either intentional, unintentional, and when I mean intentional means that somebody did it to you intentionally, or unintentional like death, for instance, in my case, happened to you, you need to realize that you were impacted in one way or the other. Because every day, Dr. Unati, my fear is that I should live long and not leave my kids at a young age. Do you know what that is? It is so traumatic that even if there is a risk I need to take, potentially a groundbreaking risk that will transform my life, I have this fear at the back of my mind. What about if it doesn't work? You are the only one for your family. Don't do it. Stay back. Remain where you are. The income you are earning is okay. Don't do anything risky or anything stupid. There will be no one for the kids. These things play in your mind all the time, and it affects you.
I know. You've
Personally,
said that.
I have been affected. So I want our audience to know that we are all coming together to heal. Realizing healing is very important because you continue to re-victimize and re-perpetuate onto your children. And then your children will also take that with them, pass it on to their children, and the cycle will never end. I believe that we have an opportunity of enlightenment to change the course of that. So that is my beginning to this course today. It is
I love
very
it.
critical we set the stage right.
I love it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I should also just share my own story briefly here that we are all healing together. I happen to have been a single mom raising up my child. Her father became absent from the scene since when she was 3 years old. And up till now, she turns 21 this month. In 2 weeks, she's going to be 21. She has never set eyes on her father. She has never had a physical contact with her father. And she has had to go through life knowing just me as her mother. And for her, that was extremely traumatic. And last night, when I thought about this show, I asked her a question. I said, how has it been for you? And she said, Mom, it was like a door that I kept open for a long time, hoping and thinking one day my father will walk through the door and be available for me physically or emotionally. But she said, it got to a point in my life where I had to make a choice. Do I keep weeping and looking through this door and nothing was coming? Or do I just close the door and face my life? I can proudly say my daughter is a survivor. At the age of 21, she's graduated from university with 2 degrees. She's an excellent student. She has a fantastic job. She's a joy to behold. She's a child that even that one can be so proud of. She did not let the trauma that she went through define her. She did not let the absence of her father impact her. And I am so glad that God gave me the grace, I'm a Christian, to look after her. And God raised other men around me to stand in the place of a father for her. But yes, she's a survivor. So I'm just here to let every single mom out there know that even if your kids are going through father wounds, it doesn't have to be permanent. They can make the choice of either riveting in the trauma or healing from it. And I think that's the purpose that has brought us here today, to talk about how we can heal from that trauma and how we can still be the best in life, just like the testimony of my daughter. Thank you.
Wow. Guys, I loved it. I loved it. And again, what I am gathering from both of you is choice. There's choice to be made. There's choice to be chosen here. There's choice and difficult choices. And I mean, there's women, there's fathers that are confronted with trauma every day. There's parental alienation, there's court cases going on and perpetuating these wounds on the parent herself or himself. There's costs involved, there's finances involved. Oh, like you said last time, some women were molested, some women were raped, and these kids, they have to face them every day. But again, kids did not bring themselves here. So now let's go back again. Let's define again, childhood trauma, because sometimes people, the childhood trauma aspect, or maybe the full definition of it, is sometimes misunderstood, and also its impact. Some of the stuff I've been reading and also listening to other people, sometimes trauma happens under the same roof with kids, with both parents there, and experiencing the parents differently. And again, I'm hoping to bring you guys back when we have to talk about stepchildren.
Yeah.
When a stepchild brings himself or herself to the picture, thinking that it was all rosy for the kids that grew up with both parents, unknowingly that actually one of them or all of them did experience trauma under the same roof with both parents. I'm gonna let you guys go on that.
Okay. Dr. T, if you don't mind, I will take this one first. The The definition of trauma, if you look into it, and we bring it right back into the topic that we're discussing right now, has to do with any unfavorable exposure of an individual to a condition. Okay. And that condition impacts your natural state of perception. Okay. So your natural state, this is how things are supposed to be. And there's an unfavorable situation that impacts you. Okay. So it can be physical, it can be mental, it can be spiritual, okay, and or a combination thereof, okay, and also it can be experiential. You experience it, so it comes from all this. And the parental wounds that we talk about, you can experience them through all these angles. Okay, so you mentioned a point where there are situations where both parents are present. Okay. You can be physically present, but emotionally absent to your children. I think Dr. T talked about that last time, that you can be physically present in the house. The kids see you, but you are not there emotionally for them. And they grow through that trauma. So they see you there. So that's a different form of trauma. And the one that Dr. Tope talked about in her experience, for instance, and my experience, the father being absent, that is a different form of trauma. It's a feeling that can evolve to become trauma when you realize that it is a deliberate attempt by another person to deny you what you think you deserve or you are entitled. It's a birthright for you to know your father and interact with your father. Now, in the case of stepchildren or coming into the situation, that is a very dicey and complex situation. And usually the biological parent has a significant role to play. The biological parent has a significant role to play in breaking down the barriers of, after all, you are not my dad or you are not my mom syndrome. Because that because when one of them tries to correct that child from a place of love, it is sometimes perceived as abuse, but it's not. Your parents would have done this. Your mom would have done. Your real mother would have done the same thing to you. Your real dad would have corrected you the same way. He or she does not hate you. So the birth parent, which is either the woman or the man in the relationship, has a significant role to teach that child that your real dad, from a place of love, would have reacted the same way. So so that the a natural behavior is not misconstrued as abuse. Or
Love it.
Absolutely.
yeah, Dr.
I
T,
love
I'll
it.
hand over to you.
Dr. Charles, that is so true. And recently I was talking, because I'm currently in a blended family, and of course it has its own challenges. I was speaking to a psychologist recently, and she said something that if you ever have stepchildren with you, it is the 100% responsibility of the biological parent to parent that child. The stepdad, stepmom play a supportive role. And just like you said, when they start to discipline, when they start to point them in the right direction, it doesn't mean they hate them. It doesn't mean they have to take on that victim personality. And it's really fraught with a lot of challenges. And I think it really requires a lot of grace, a lot of patience, a lot of understanding, and a lot of communication to win in this dynamics. It's really not easy. I must say that it's not easy. I am currently experiencing that right now. It's not an easy road to tread. But once you know you are coming from a place of love, I think that's the most important thing. And the biological parent should also stand by you, communicate with you to ensure that both of you are parenting these children to be the best that they can going forward.
Absolutely.
Yes. I
Absolutely.
love it.
And to add to a little bit to what Dr. T just said, and in a situation whereby the other biological parent is at a long distance, that parent can also create a lot of triangulations, and that can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Yes, we see that a lot. I mean, in the community, in practice, where also a child receives information that is not for a child's age,
Yeah.
adult content. We see all these things. So now let's go back to the amount of trauma that happens and the end result. Let's dive into that. What happens to this child when he or she experiences this absence of a father? whether physically or emotionally, or actually sometimes even traumatic in the manner that you get physically abused by your parent in the
Absolutely.
name of discipline. What is the end result? We see this all the time in the community, in practice. Today we have depression, post-traumatic stress disorders. Let's get to the bottom of why do we see all of this.
Dr. Charles, can I go first here?
Yes, please.
So I'm going to be talking about the ACEs questionnaire experiences. The ACEs talks about adverse childhood experiences. This was a big study carried out in the 90s by the Center for Disease Control and 𝐟𝐫𝐢𝐝𝐚𝐲 Permanente in the United States of America. And they kind of followed a lot of children to find out some traumatic events that happened to them. They asked them questions about, poverty, not having clothes to wear, being abused, a parent being absent, either because they were dead, they were in jail. Did they live with people that had drinking problems? Again, we have the father that is physically there, but is always drunk and is so abusive emotionally and physically to the children and their mom. Did the parents ever hit them or beat them, or harm them in any way by so doing? Did they live with anybody that went to jail? Did they ever feel put down as children? Were they ever spoken down? So they asked all of these questions. And what they found was that children that were exposed to all or some of this trauma ended up with a lot of problems as they grew older. And this problem, we always feel, it was psychological abuse, so it's going to be psychological. No, it was much more than just psychological problem. We found that these children were more likely to have brain injury. They were more likely to have PTSD, anxiety and depression. They were more likely to get unintended pregnancies. They were more likely to be pregnant as teenagers. They were more likely to get sexually transmitted disease. They were more likely to abuse alcohol and drugs. They were more likely to drop out of school and not finish school. They were more likely to have certain kind of cancers. They were more likely to have high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, heart attacks. So look at it. It's so broad, the effects of trauma. It's not just about the emotional, but physical. And this is backed by science. It's not guesswork. This is based on studies done in the United States where they followed a lot of children. And when they compared them to children that did not have these adverse experiences, they found that they did better psychologically, educationally, and physically. I'll stop.
Wow.
So the Australian Institute of Family Studies came up with a very detailed review of such studies, and they tried to break it down. I'll just share as some excerpts for us to add here, and that goes to buttress what Dr. T just said. So the issue of the manifestation. So what we need to understand is that the manifestations, the manifestations of the childhood trauma has a direct link to the following. One, the age at which the trauma occurred. They realize that the younger you were at the time of the trauma, the likely it is for that trauma to be hidden for a long time and show up very later in life. And that is dangerous. Dr. Nati, that is so dangerous because it will be buried. So maybe even during your youth, you won't even find it. And later in life, when you are married, that you begin to exhibit some behaviors in your marriage or in your adult life, in your career, that you are struggling. Why? And sometimes, guess what? Your mom or your dad will say, I raised that child. I never raised him to be like this. Where did she get that behavior from? It will be traced to something that happened to that child when she was very little.
Yes. The thing is, the brain matures. It takes 25 years to mature a brain, Dr. Charles.
Exactly. And from the age, we go to the severity of the abuse. How severe was it? So the severity of the abuse can also play a role into the behavior adverse behaviors Dr. Tope has listed them, the adverse behaviors. So the severity of the abuse. So you think that you're fighting with your husband and wife in the presence of the children, you're insulting each other, you're doing all the things that you think you're doing to get even with this man. Are you exposing the children to the same thing? You are damaging your children.
Yes.
The severity. Okay. Now, from there, the types of the abuse, whether it is physical or it is neglect, or it is soft. That also, and also, how long did the abuse occur? Was it throughout, or it was just on and off? In the case of sexual abuse, where it sometimes can be on and off, but there are some that happens throughout the child's life, and that can be a big underlying factor for the manifestations that Dr. Tope talked about. And get this, and this surprised me when I read this article, the relationship the child had with the perpetrator of the abuse. The relationship. Okay? And because remember last week I said, if it's your dad, you revere that man, you love that man. If it's your mom, you revere this one, you love her. And this is the same person causing you that pain. It is heavy. It is heavy to carry when you are a child, and when you become old and you process it, sometimes you will cry. Sometimes you will think that you have overcome it. You'll be alone and like, why did my dad do this to me? Why did my mom do this to me? You begin to relive the painful, as an adult, the pains that you went through as a child. So it's very, very, very important for us to be very careful what we're doing to these children, because it is not something that you will see in their teenage life. It is something that will show maybe when you are dead and gone. I'll stop here.
Wow. And I think, culturally, especially for us Africans, there are a lot of things that we feel are okay. We feel it's okay to shout on each other when we are having arguments, like Dr. Charles said. But I think it's now time. Our parents did that. They probably didn't know any better. We have this platform to let parents out there know that our actions, our inactions can have adverse effects on our children. And we need to apply a lot of wisdom. If you want to have an argument, take a drive outside the house and have an argument with your spouse, or lock yourself in the room and have a mature discussion without breaking things, because whether we like it or not, we're impacting our children. Let's save our children. Let's make healthy adults. Let's make people that are not so traumatized, so that they can also have successful stories, whether it's in their workplace, in their marriages, in their communities, in their relationships, by our own actions today.
You know what, Dr.
And we need to stop the train of re-victimization by these children, because they see that to be normal. They become emotionally removed from the same actions that was done to them. Because if I survived it, why won't you also survive it? And that child also grows up and say, yeah, my grandma, my mom said my grandmom did the same thing to her. So if I do to you, you will also survive. You will not die. Haven't we heard these things before?
I know.
It is called the train of re-victimization. That needs to
Guess
stop.
what? It's interesting because we're talking about how children would experience their parents differently. Now, this takes us actually to the parenting styles, where we normalize screaming at our kids or neglecting our kids, and maybe teenage pregnancies that occurred, and then you are off to the city going to work. And this is not to put down the women that had their children at young age, but at some point you need to have a plan for your child. Once things have changed, your story has changed, the growing, that is neglect that child. Her or he's thinking, my mom never really loved me. The fact that I'm living with my grandparents here forever, we need to have a plan. If a story happened to you, you have to have a plan at some point so that that child doesn't, because self-esteem is built by the age of 3 to 5. That child starts interpreting the world. The world is cruel. People are cruel. What's the point of getting married? What's the point? And then now we raise these angry children that will be angry wives or angry men, husbands out there that will never value the importance of healthy relationships. Guys, this goes beyond. It goes beyond at workplaces. How many people keep resigning at work because they work with narcissistic bosses?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. How many people work with narcissistic co-workers? Something happened to those people. There is no way a human being would have such animosity towards another person if he doesn't or she doesn't have a story. All right.
And that's why they say hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
The people that
You
are hurt
really-
are the people that hurt people. But now I just want us to be a little bit more practical here, because we're talking about when sometimes kids need to live with family and stuff like that. Because in life, we don't all have perfect homes and perfect families and everything.
Yeah.
For example, for me as a single mom, bringing up my child and doing my residency training, there were times I had to take her back to Africa for my parents to look after her while I did my training, because there was nobody else. That doesn't mean that I didn't love her, even though I was not physically available for that child. I made sure I was emotionally available for her. And I kept letting her know that this is just a phase. There is an end to it.
Yes.
You understand? So that we're not painting the picture, we all have to be there. But no, those children really have to know that sometimes there will be phases, there will be ups and downs, but we should always be available to them.
Yes.
There must be a plan.
When the child knows that you're working, and when the child knows that my dad is awake 24 hours because he's working to make sure he puts roof over my head, they appreciate you. They don't even feel you're absent, because they know that my dad is somewhere else. I don't see my dad. I see him once a year because he has to be somewhere doing something.
Communication.
And trust me, it's interesting to know that sometimes parents who work remotely from home have very good parents. I'm being honest.
Absolutely. We've seen that.
Because my mother told me one thing. She said, don't always think about how long you spend with somebody. Think about the quality of how much time you spend with the person. So if you're going to call the person for 5 minutes, what does that 5 minutes mean to the individual? All right. Somebody can spend 24 hours with their children. They don't even get 5 minutes of his time. There's a mom or a dad working away from home. He calls home. Guess what? Daddy is calling. 5 minutes. They look forward to it. They look forward to daddy's good night. Good night. I love you. That is enough to take them through the week, to take them through the month. They could be living home with mommy and daddy. They don't even get the same. So it is about being emotionally present and emotionally intelligent with your children and bringing them along. Need to know basis based on their age is very important. Don't avoid having hard conversations with your children from a point of love so they will understand you. Because it is through that you break the cycle of assumptions. Because when they start assuming so many things in their head and they are not able to discuss it with you, it becomes their truth. It becomes their reality. And they will live it. Okay. Now, another dark thing that expresses itself is suicidal tendencies.
Yes.
Big issue in our African community. It's a shame for someone to even talk about it. It is not that people are realizing that it's deeper than just shaming people. It could be as a result of things that has happened today to them. So I am appealing for our communities, our societies to be more understanding and more accepting. Look, because of social media, people have become ruthless. People can attack you and verbally abuse you online for making a comment. They won't have that patience to even ask you to explain. I am appealing to people who are on social media to realize that that person who is posting something you think is random, maybe he's dealing with something. Let us love each other and be there for one another and look at people from the point of needing help. Or maybe this is not him. Maybe this person needs help. Come from an empathetic point of view. Instead of always going all out and dealing with people, I'm going to show them, I'm going to do this. This is very, very, very important, Dr. Unati.
COVID-19 has taught us, Dr. Charles, to be more compassionate. We are more thoughtful, and we are forced to be with ourselves. This season, if anyone did not learn from this experience to be able to nurture and also understand where people are coming from, we'll never learn and we'll never understand. We'll never understand. And to be honest, guys, this is so broad. And I still want us to go back to the parental alienation syndrome. The parents, even those that live together, the continuous bashing each other or bashing another parent to paint themselves, the person who's doing it, to paint themselves as a better parent in this house. Or let's not even talk about that piece, the ones that are not living together, the separated parents, the relationships that failed. Guys, let's talk about this, because this is a very same reason we're seeing people that are struggling, not knowing who to be with. The father, I mean, Dr. Tope, we see this, Dr. T, all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Parents bringing their 10-year-old, expecting you and I to start them on an antidepressant. And when you dig, the same
yeah,
very parent is putting down the other parent.
exactly. We
Can you
talked
comment
about
on
that the
that?
last time on the last session we had, where we talked about, letting the children make up their minds, not using our children as pawns to win our game, not using them as tools for our own selfish ends. I think that's really, really wicked of any parent to do to a child, because you're messing that child up, not just for now, but for their future. At the end of the day, that same child is going to turn against you and may not even talk to you. I know of kids that don't call their parents anymore. I know of kids that want nothing to do with their parent, one or the other, because of the trauma that they put them through, because of their own personal selfishness. So, and again, talking about love conquers everything. Love and forgiveness conquers everything. Dr. Nati and I were having a discussion recently about people that decide not to get the COVID vaccine. And they're coming to us, they don't want to get it, but sometimes it's from fear, it's from anxiety. As our role, we're not there to judge them. We're there to listen to them. We're there to empathize with them. We're there to be a listening ear, to show them love, and to respect whatever decision they make at the end of the day. Love conquers everything.
Love it. I love it. I love it. And you know what? And I know that people are still hurting. Guys,
Yeah.
it's not nice not to be raised with your parents, both of them. And also knowing of your father or knowing of your mother being somewhere with her or his own family, beautiful, and you struggling here with your mother or your father. And you listen to these stories, these women or these men sharing all this. And men that wanted to be part of their kids' lives, but because didn't work out, things didn't work out between them and the mother. Let's talk about that, because we see this a lot when there's a continuous resentment towards that figure because it did not work out. And then you use the child to hold off. You're not going to see your child. We see
Dr.
this all
Nati,
the time,
that
guys.
is, you see, that is very painful. The intensity of love and and the intensity of hate are very directly proportional. So how much you love the person, and it will be equivalent to how much you are potentially going to hate that person when things don't work out. That you don't even want to have anything to do with the person. Sometimes you even look at your own children and you are angry. That
Yes.
why did I even have these children with this man or with this woman? Now, I want to remove myself a bit so that we can put ourselves into the same shoe. Now, let's just look at a situation whereby that child is independent from both of you, and that child has basic needs. When you look at it from that perspective, you will realize that you have the most sacred responsibility not to deny that child their basic needs. And one of them is not to deny that child the biological parent, if that person is willing and ready to avail.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because we
And
have
also, Dr.
situations where
T.
they're not. We have
Yes.
situations where they're not. We have
Yeah.
Yes.
situations where they say, you know what, I've had this child, I'm just like a donor, I want nothing to do with the child.
Yes. Yes.
What do you
And
do?
also, let's also put the piece where even that parent now is a dysfunctional person who needs help. And let's be careful there, because we have seen mothers also speaking ill of that person's struggles to the child, a content that is inappropriate for the child. So now let's go back to the practical way of looking at it, because now we want to prevent wounds here at a later stage. You find yourself with a parent struggling with alcoholism, with drugs. I want you guys to give advice here to a parent who is struggling with an ex-partner who has alcohol issues, who has drug issues, and would like to protect his or her child from this parent.
I've heard a powerful thing called co-parenting, okay,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful model where you can all agree on certain things that will be good for the child. So there's an agreement in place. Okay. So for instance, if this man is alcoholic, his alcoholism should not have any impact on what he wants to do for his child. You need to make sure that he doesn't expose the child to the same vices. Let him deal with his demons. He needs help. Let him go seek that help. That is a personal thing for the person to look for. It has no bearing on what the two of you should be able to agree to do for the child. Practically, that is what has to happen. If there's assumption of it's your child, it's your daughter, come and take them when I want, or this. And sometimes when we get the courts involved too much, common sense evaporates from decision making for the child. I'm being very brutally blunt here. If I offend anybody, I'm sorry. But when you get the court system involved too much, sometimes common sense evaporates from decision-making processes. It becomes impossible to make something that it is so simple for this child to do, except in cases where we know that one of the parents is a risk to the child of maybe physical abuse or anything. Then the court system is perfectly right. Sometimes some of the issues in the court system shouldn't have been there in the first place. It should have been two adults willing to work on things together for the interest of the child.
Yes. Yep. Lovely. Yes, because these things, they are happening, and that parent responsible for that child has every right to protect the child. And sometimes we need to also get, like in our cultural perspective as Africans, there's uncles that are willing to step in. You understand? The problem I have is when there is just nothing, the parent that has the child, the sole custodian of the child, nothing to do with that family. Because when you look around in that family, they can't all be alcoholics. They can't all be alcoholics.
Absolutely.
All right? Absolutely. Dr. T, guys, I know that this is a very packed topic, and honestly, I would love to get back and talk about the stepchildren and the dynamics, because a lot of times this topic is misunderstood, and there's a lot of anger involved, and a lot of judgment towards even the children that grew up with both parents who also went through trauma that you are not aware of. And not to be insensitive to the kids that are struggling with the fact that their parent never raised them. Dr. T, I would like you to wrap up this topic and share your nuggets on how to go about this depression and the PTSD you mentioned here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for the time on your show today. We've talked about trauma. We've talked about adverse childhood experiences. And I would really strongly recommend everybody, even adults, to go online and look for a document called ACEs Aware. So just search for ACEs questionnaire. And I want you to score yourself. And if you find that you score high there, maybe you may be dealing with some childhood trauma, and it's time to go and see your doctor and have a chat with them so that you can avoid all these other effects that we talked about. And my take home is just to let everybody know that love conquers everything, whether it's love towards your child, love towards your partner, even if they've hurt you, love towards the community, love towards yourself. I think that's just the best thing to take away today. That would help us heal from whatever hurts that we might have gone through. So doctors are here to help you. Therapists are here to help you. Feel free to reach out. You are not alone. A lot of people are struggling. So don't ever think you are the odd one out when you start to suffer from some of these effects. Thank you so much, Dr. Nati.
Thank you so much. I know, Dr. Charles, you wanted to head out to some place.
Yes.
You want to wrap up something? As a dad, I would like you to leave a word for anyone who's out there hurting.
I'm going to leave everyone. You know what I always do? I will leave you with some pointers. Okay. I will try and give 3 or 4 pointers. First and foremost, be humble. And be humble enough as a parent to do a self-introspection, to see whether you are carrying any loads from your child from the past. And are you transferring that load to your children, knowingly or unknowingly? So be humble. Do that self-introspection. 2, if things did not work between you and the biological parent of your child, know that you have a responsibility to create a very good barrier between what happened and your child. Don't mix the two. Your child is innocent. Don't punish them because of your anger issues or your frustrations or your neglect. 3, when it gets to a point where things are spiraling out, as a parent, we know when things are getting out of hand, seek help. Your husband or your wife or the step parent might not be a specialist to help. Don't burden them when things start spiraling out. There are people who are trained who can help you de-escalate and reposition things, because a lot of children misbehave because of the trauma they've endured, not because they are bad kids. And my last one, community. Let us raise children together in love. In the olden days, it used to be the community raises a child. Now it is a parent raises a child. When community used to raise a child, guess what? This child knows that this person is there for me, that person is there for me, that person cares for me, that person's care for me. They have a wide, broad support. Today, if you remove a mom or you remove a dad, children don't have any support. It's collapsed. And that is dangerous. We need to create a very broad support system for our children. And if you're a Christian, be prayerful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr.
so much, guys. I loved it, guys. You know what, to our viewers, thank you so much for staying with us. This is a very heartfelt conversation because each one of us has experienced this. I shared my story last week. If you missed it, go back to our part 2. These issues that I bring here is all about awakening consciousness and also introspection, like Dr. Charles was saying, and growth. That's all this show is about, growth. And we cannot say we don't know. These things are freely available for you guys. And like we said, always follow up with your doctor, with your therapist. And the mentality of thinking that it's a white thing in the case or in the context of my people from our Black community, no. We are seeing more and more people committing suicide here because of the childhood traumas they never dealt with or they never exhumed. So this is an opportunity for all of us to look inside our hearts. I actually dropped the ACEs Dr. T talked about. Go check them out, score yourself, and go seek help. And again, thank you so much, you guys. I enjoyed you. God bless. Thank you so much. You guys come back next time. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nati. Thank you.